Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is the story about Naruto. What if Naruto was born with Sharingan? Part 1, 14K special. Thank you guys for this much love and support. Hope you'll enjoy this video. So before we start, please do support for more awesome content and also hit the subscribe button and share this video with your friends and also support the creator of this fanfic. I have created many playlists, check it out in the channel. So let's start the video. The night was that of a Friday. I know that doesn't matter in a ninja village, but this night was special, as hurry up and get this baby out of me, somebody was giving birth. And yet at the same time, it was a day of destruction, as a demon was attacking the village. Except this wasn't just some weak run-of-the-mill type of demon, no, this was the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the strongest demon known to man. Why was it attacking the village? That is a question no one knew, and they weren't going to ask it, as it was killing every ninja that was in its range. But with tails that, with a single swing, can cause earthquakes, tsunamis, and many other natural occurring disasters, everything was in its range. In the hospital, Namikaze Uzumaki Kushina was not what you would call a patient person. She was yelling to the doctor to hurry up and deliver her baby. "Come on, keep pushing, I can see the head," the doctor said, as she helped Kushina give birth. Her husband, Namikaze Minato, was right by her side encouraging her and having his hand squeezed. "Come on honey, breathe, breathe," he yelled as his wife squeezed his hand a little too hard. The doctor had most of the infants out. "All right, give me one last big push. Congratulations Namikaze-sama, he's a handsome healthy baby boy," she said as she let Minato cut the cord and cleaned the baby off before handing the baby to the tired mother. Kushina smiled down to her newborn child. "Hello little one, I'm your Kasan, welcome to life," she said softly as the infant began to cry before she started to rock it gently to calmness. "Minato-kun, what do we call him?" she asked her husband, knocking him out of his stupor of finally becoming a father. Minato wrapped his arms around his wife and kid as he made a shadow clone to take their first picture as a family. "We'll name him Naruto, Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto," he said, but unfortunately the moment was interrupted when an ANBU came in. The ANBU bowed as he spoke through his dragon mask. "Hokage-sama, the Kyuubi is nearly at the village, you have to help us," the ANBU begged as the yondaime dismissed him with a wave of his hand. Minato then turned to his wife who had tears in her eyes. "It's time, isn't it?" she said under her breath as she continued to rock her child. "Can I just have a little more time with him?" she asked, this time kissing her son all over his face. She kissed his head again as he opened his eyes and she saw his freshly blue-gray eyes. She smiled down at him as her own emerald-like eyes bled into red as her Sharingan came to life to help memorize her son's smiling baby face. You have to understand her history first. Her grandmother on her mother's side of the family was an Uchiha, and her grandfather on her father's side of the family was a Senju, but not just any Senju, this one was Hashirama himself. She herself married a Namikaze, and she's an Uzumaki, so her child was literally going to be the strongest ninja in history, maybe even exceeding the Rikudo Sennin. With the Uchiha's bloodline, the Uzumaki's longevity, and large chakra reserves, the Namikaze's stamina, and amazing techniques, and the Senju's military intelligence, analytical minds, and their uncanny ability to be cage level, then it's no question just how strong Naruto will become. She could tell that she didn't have much time since she had lost a large amount of blood and no amount of blood pills would bring it back. Her fully matured Sharingan eyes morphed into that of a four-pointed star, Tsukuyomi. She whispered as she sent her son into a 3-day-long genjutsu that only lasted a single second in real life. What she did in the 3-day span will most likely be known later in his life when the memory of the event is systematically unlocked later in his life. What was weird though was that her chakra levels seriously plummeted, the machine monitoring it was going crazy at the sudden drop. Minato had seen what his wife did, but like always he didn't have time to panic as she was done a second later, but who said he didn't panic as he watched the machine go crazy a second later as his wife's chakra levels dropped down from 85% to 25%. "Oh shit," he muttered as he quickly stepped to her bedside and popped a soldier pill in her mouth and her chakra levels rose to 35%, but he didn't see that, all he saw was her Sharingan fade from view. He wasn't a yondaime for nothing as he noticed a slight flux of energy enter Naruto before disappearing altogether. "Ooh, I understand now," he thought as Kushina gave him one final kiss to Naruto's head and gave him to her husband saying in a very low and raspy voice, "Go save the village." She said that with tears in her eyes as they shared one final kiss, knowing they weren't going to see each other in this life. Just when he stopped the kiss and left, the nurse finally entered to check on Kushina after hearing the chakra machine. Kushina gave one last thought as she felt her life slip out of her body. Take that, Kyuubi. It's time for you to enter yet another Uzumaki, and after this one you'll never experience freedom ever again. She thought as she fully passed with a smirk on her face. On the battlefield, the ninja of the village were still doing battle with the Kyuubi when the Yondaime appeared on top of the Toad boss summon, Gamabunta, the chief Toad. Yondaime is here, we're saved. A random Jounin yelled. Another giant toad appeared, on top of this one was Jiraiya, and the Sandaime, this toad was Gamaken. And Jiraiya, we're even more saved. The same Jounin yelled again. And though reinforcements had arrived, the Kyuubi was still doing damage to the village, and he even wounded Gamabunta in his left eye. That was seconds before the retreating shinobi witnessed a bright flash of light, and when the battlefield became clear again, they only saw Gamaken, with the Sandaime, and Jiraiya on his head. No Minato, Gamabunta, or even Kyuubi. It took a second for them to realize that the Kyuubi had been defeated. They expressed their immense joy at the defeat of the great Kyuubi no Kitsune. And it was all thanks to the Yondaime. And speaking of the Yondaime, hey, where's the Yondaime? The Jounin asked a question that made many shut up and think about it. They now knew that the Yondaime gave up his life to get rid of the great demon fox. They took about a second to mourn the loss of their Yondaime before they renewed their cheering of their victory over that of the Kyuubi. Closer to the disappearance of the Kyuubi was Jiraiya and Hiruzen, and they were searching for the body of Minato. Even after a thorough search for the body, they still couldn't find it. Even after a flux of chakra filled the air minutes ago, they just couldn't pinpoint the location it came from, with all the leftover Yauki in the air. They were beginning to give up on the search until they heard the sound of crying inside of one of Kyuubi's larger and deeper footprints, at least a dozen feet deep. We found them. An ANBU yelled to his leader. Soon Jiraiya and Hiruzen and a squad of ANBU were at the site. Sandaime and his student jumped into the crater and walked to the blonde pair. Minato was pale like his soul was recently taken from him, and little Naruto was still crying. Nobody knew what was happening to him, but the Sandaime took a closer look as he bent down to pick him up. What he saw nearly made him faint. In the child's eyes was a fully matured Sharingan, and the kamas were spinning crazily before vanishing from view, returning the infant's eyes to their original blue-gray. This truly was the birth of a legend. The Sandaime, Jiraiya, and the ANBU were jumping towards the hospital to return the child to his mother when a toad appeared in a puff of smoke on Jiraiya's shoulder and whispered in his ear. He stopped and listened to the toad. This made the others stop as well. What is Jiraiya-kun? Sandaime asked his only remaining student as he carefully held the infant in his arms. Jiraiya's eyes were getting wider and wider the more the toad said. The toad disappeared as his missions were successful. Jiraiya handed over the body of his student to the nearest ANBU after saying a quick prayer for his lost pupil. Sensei, Gamasui just informed me of Orochimaru's last whereabouts. You know I have to go and check it out. He also told me that he recently joined an organization of some sorts, and I need to check what kind of organization. I'll be back whenever I have the time to, Ja. He said as he body flickered away. Sandaime's eyes narrowed after hearing about his once favorite student. He knew he should have just killed him a couple of months ago for his treasonous acts, but he just couldn't find it in him to commit the deed. He sighed as they finally reached the hospital to return the baby to his mother and to tell her the grim news about her husband. He looked at the only ANBU that remained at his side. The others had gone to take Yondaime's body to the morgue. This ANBU wore an Inu mask, and behind that you would see the face of a battle-hardened 15-year-old. The third shinobi war was truly devastating to all. Atop of his head you could see silver hair that seemed to defy gravity as it stood up, diagonally, in the air. He wore the standard armor required for ANBU and carried the standard ninja too that ANBU carried as their weapons. They would have walked into the lobby of the hospital if the head doctor wasn't there to stop them. "What is it you want, Nico, Sunlight?" asked the Sandaime. Nico, the head doctor, bowed. "I'm sorry to disturb you, Hokage-sama, but I must tell you that Uzumaki Kushina passed away a half hour ago," she said, bowing again, this one lower than the last. Both the Sandaime and Inu's eyes widened. Kushina was dead. No, it couldn't be. They blasted past the doctor and into the building, but halfway to the room they saw her being carried in a body bag. As the body passed, Naruto woke up and began to cry, reminding them that they still had him. I guess that he somehow could sense the death of his mother, just like he had with his father. What are you going to do with the child now, Hokage-sama? Inu asked his leader, who was trying to calm the child down, but it was to no avail. Sandaime gave him a long and heavy sigh as he started walking out of the hospital. I don't know, I have to get the council together for a decision on the boy's future. 2 hours later. Sandaime gathered the council for the meeting. He only wanted the Shinobi Council, but he had to call in the Civilian Council to talk about the reconstruction process. After talking about all of that, Shimura Danzo spoke up, so are you going to finalize your decision on being reinstated for the seat of Kage? Because if not, I think that I'll do a great job on being the Godame of Konoha. He said after a moment of thinking. The others were nodding their head at the first question, only the civvies and the other elders were nodding their heads at the second statement. Sandaime looked at the bandaged man. Yes, I reinstated myself as the Hokage. He said, causing Danzo to frown. Now I have something more important to tell you. You know when I said earlier that the Kyuubi had been killed by my predecessor, well that wasn't entirely true, the Kyuubi was in fact defeated, but it was not killed. He said with a straight serious face. What is it you have to say, Hokage-sama? Hyuga Hiashi asked. This man was the leader of his clan just like the other members of the Shinobi Council. He was considered a genius in the uses of his clan's Dojutsu, the Byakugan. He was 34 years old and stood at 5 feet, 7 inches. He had pale skin and the white eyes associated with his clan. Yes, what is it you have to tell us that was so important that it wasn't the first thing to talk about? Asked Uchiha Fugaku with a tone that told everyone he was irritated that the meeting had to continue. He was the leader of his own clan and also the leader of the village's police force, so we all could understand why he was acting this way. He was 35 years old and was 5 feet 3 inches. He had lightly tanned skin and black eyes that would turn red and show his clan's Dojutsu, the Sharingan. He also had a 3-year-old son named Itachi, who was already showing that he had skills in the ninja arts. Sandaime lightly glared at the two. Well, I would have told you if you hadn't interrupted me now. Like I was saying, that Kyuubi wasn't killed, but it was sealed into a newborn baby. As he said, that Kakashi entered the room with Naruto in his arms. It took a moment for the information to register in their minds before some of the room's occupants started yelling for the death of the baby Kyuubi. Haruno Sakumi's banshee-like voice far surpassed that of the others as she yelled, Hokage-sama, I beg of you, you must kill that demon. It killed my entire clan. Her voice screeched loudly, shutting everyone up and also making Inuzuka Tsume and her ninja dog cover their ears. But everybody didn't really care about the pink-haired family of banshees. Every person in that Kami-forsaken clan was just as loud as she was, even the old people. One person spoke up, I mean no disrespect Sakumi, but who the fuck cares? Mitakato Hamura asked, shocking everyone at the explicit as they all looked at him. What? He asked again. He was part of the Elder Council with Danzo and his old teammate Utatane Kaharu. Before the Sandaime could talk, laughter was heard in the room. It was loud and boisterous. It was coming from a woman. She had wild and spiky brown hair, red fang marks going down each of her cheeks, and brown eyes with a slitted pupil. Going further down you could see her Jounin flak jacket and brownish shirt, hiding what I believe to be a small D-cup breast. She stood at 5 feet 5 inches, and she was 23 years old. She was Inuzuka Tsume, and sitting next to her was her companion Koromaru. He was a gruff and tough-looking dog. He had an eye patch over his right eye and was tall enough to reach Tsume's waist. He had a bluish coat on top of his body with a white coat for his underbody. Man, for an old bastard, you sure can make jokes. She said, laughing more. The weak kai coming from Sakumi wasn't affecting her in any way, but the kai coming from the Hokage made her stop laughing. She chuckled weakly as she said, sorry Hokage-sama, continue please. She said, adding the please for an added measure. Saratobi nodded at her, accepting the apology. Now Sakumi, I'm sorry, but I can't kill this child. He said, raising his hand, stopping her retort. I can't and won't kill this child because he has the strongest lineage this village has ever produced. I'm sure you all remember the Uzumaki clan? He asked the council, watching them nod their heads. Well, this is the heir to that clan, but not only that clan, he is also the heir to the Namikaze clan. He added, watching their reactions. The room was yet again sent into an uproar, many saying liar and others saying where's the proof. It wasn't until Aburam Shibi spoke up, you're right, I can see the resemblance, it's as clear as day. Who else in this entire village has blonde hair like that? If you take away the whisker marks on the boy's cheeks, then you have an exact replica of the Yondaime Hokage. The man spoke, shutting up everyone with his general logic. This man stood at 5 feet 8 inches. He was 30 years old. I'm sorry, but that is all I can tell you, as he was wearing a dark gray coat and hood that took away all of his features. He also wore a pair of black shades to take away the color of his eyes. But all of this didn't make everybody respect his logic. It was because he is considered the strongest in the village thanks to clan's Kikai bugs. But even his clan's bugs didn't do squat to the Kyuubi, as it destroyed every one of the bugs most of his clan members sent at it. He lost many of his clan members tonight. Well, nobody asked you, you freak. Sakumi muttered under her breath. It didn't get on Shibi's nerves like many thought it would, but it did get on somebody else's. Keep it quiet, some people are trying to sleep, this whole meeting is troublesome. The man said, as he tried to attempt to go back to sleep. He was Narashikaku. He had black hair and a pineapple-like style, lazy brown eyes, and wore a jounin flak jacket and some kind of deer fur over it. He also wore some mesh under this with a black shirt going over that. He stood at 5 feet 7 inches and was 27 years old. Both of his teammates were on either side of him, Akimichi Chauza and Yamanaka Inoichi. Chauza was a large and kind man that was always eating. He wore some kind of armor and had a single purple squiggly thing on each of his cheeks. He was 27 years old and stood at 5 feet 6 inches. Yamanaka Inoichi was also a kind man that could be fierce when he wanted to, just like any other ninja in Konoha. He wore the regular jounin outfit and had some kind of faded blonde hair and a long ponytail. He stood at 5 feet and 11 inches and was 27 years old. These three men made up a special group called Inoshikacho. They were put together in the Second Shinobi War and were made famous with their impressive teamwork. Everything to you is troublesome, Shikaku. Both Chauza and Inoichi said. The Hokage cleared his throat to get the attention of him again. Well, if all of you are done interrupting this meeting, I would like to continue now. Where was I? He asked himself. Oh, that's right, why I couldn't or wouldn't kill the child, not only because it is the heir to both the Uzumaki and Namikaze clans, but there's one other thing that I suspect each and every one of you will be surprised by, none more than you Fugaku. He said, looking at the Uchiha clan head. This made the Uchiha confused, as he didn't know anything that could really surprise him. What is Hokage-sama? He asked, feeling anxious at the moment. The Hokage tilted his hat down, shadowing his eyes as he spoke. It's the real reason why I won't kill the child, it's because he has the Sharingan. He said. Everyone's eyes widened to epic proportions as they couldn't believe the information that was just given to them. Even the civilians' eyes widened, the same civies that didn't know a single thing about the ninja world. The biggest surprise didn't even come yet, as the Sandaime continued speaking, also the Sharingan is fully matured. He added, making most nearly faint at that last piece of information. Danzo couldn't let the opportunity pass up, as he quickly stood up. Saratobi, you must let me train him to properly teach him what he needs to survive the harsh realities of the shinobi world. Under my tutelage he'll soon become the strongest in the village, maybe even the whole elemental nations, and he'll be loyal to this village. He said with his power-hungry voice. No, Hokage-sama, you can't have him train Naruto-san, he'll make Naruto-san loyal to only him. Since he does have the Sharingan, that means that he is an Uchiha and thus should be trained by my clan and live in my compound. Fugaku spoke in a strong voice as he too stood up to his feet. Before the Hokage could give his answer, he was interrupted again. Pardon my interruptions, Hokage-sama, but if I may ask, how exactly did the child gain a fully matured Sharingan in the first place? Shikaku asked, getting everyone's attention as they too pondered the question. This also got the Hokage thinking, as he too pondered the question himself. Flashback. The Kyuubi had just been sealed into the child when it entered the child's mind, where it would rest up, but before it did, he noticed something off about this baby. Wait, this feels familiar. Wait a minute, this is an Uzumaki baby, Nuu. It started to make noise as it crashed around in his cage. In heaven, a woman with red hair and angel wings suddenly found herself smirking for no apparent reason. Kyuubi continued to crash into his cage when he noticed something on the other side of his cage, something, as he looked at them. One was a big red ball of energy and the other was a big ball of blue energy. He then noticed something else about his new container. This boy is a descendant of one of my creations, like Kushina. He thought the name Kushina like it was poisonous to his mind. I don't know any other people I hate more than her, maybe Madara, but he's burning in hell, so he doesn't count. Well, with this child I'll set my mistakes straight and have him kill the ones I want," he thought as he made his chakra move quickly and release both of the energy balls, causing them to spread around the boy's chakra system, enlarging his chakra coils and making the child cry at the act. "Shut up, Brad, it's getting noisy in here, I can't concentrate." He spoke to nothing as he made his chakra hurry up before the seal could finalize itself and shut off his chakra. He used his chakra to try and release the restrictions to the boy's Sharingan, being the creator who gave him the ability to do just that. As he finished, a luminescent eye appeared in front of him, showing different forms of the Manjikyu Sharingan before it rested on the same four-pointed star Kushina had. It went through the regular Sharingan forms before it rested on the three spinning Kama form and then disappearing altogether. He marveled at his work before making himself comfortable and falling into a deep sleep, awaiting the time when he finally meets his container face to face in the future. End flashback. The Hokage shrugged his shoulders, not knowing the answer. I guess that having the Kyuubi shoved his gut made his bloodlines unlock themselves automatically, he said, not knowing he was half right. "So if you can't kill it, what are you going to do with the boy?" Udatane Kaharu asked. She was an old woman that was on a genin team with Hamura and Hiruzen. They all were taught under Tabarama, the nickname of Hokage. "What I'm going to do, Kaharu, is my own decision. This meeting is over, you're all dismissed, leave my sights," he said, putting his head in one hand and waving the council away with his other. "Finally," yelled Shikaku as he literally ran out of the room. His teammates chuckled slowly. "I wonder when he'll remember about his wife waiting at home for him?" Chauza asked. Soon the room was empty and we see the Hokage in his office with Inu, who took off his mask to show him wearing another mask underneath it. But now with his mask off we can call him Haddock Kakashi, or the copycat ninja. "So Hokage-sama, what are you going to do with Naruto-kun? You know I could take him in as my son if what you're saying is true about him being sensei's kid," he said, handing the child over to his leader. Sarutobi shook his head. "No, Kakashi, I still need you in ANBU. The child will go live with the Uchihas. But don't worry about that, he will also join my ANBU forces," he said, holding up his hand, seeing Kakashi about to disagree with him. "It's my decision, and plus after releasing all of that information about the child's heritage, I fear that I will try to abduct him sometime in the future. It's for his own safety, he must live in the darkness to keep others safe. I'll release him to the Uchihas when I deem him strong enough to protect himself from most Jounins." Kakashi was surprised at this. "Really, Hokage-sama, who do you know that can do that in the village?" Kakashi asked. The Sandaime looked at him like he was stupid. "Well, I don't know, maybe me," he said sarcastically, making Kakashi's eyes widen a little. "I mean, come on, how hard can it be?" he asked, looking at the child on his desk. He had no idea what he was getting himself into this time. Right now we see little Naruto and Sarutobi sparring in the training ground behind the Hokage Tower. And even with the Hokage's knowledge of the shinobi arts, he was stumped, and still is, for the past 6 years, while training this boy. He couldn't believe the kid. As soon as he learned to walk, he was training, absorbing all kinds of information like a sponge. And he was still learning everything he threw at him. It was getting frustrated finding things to teach the boy. He knew all E, D, C, and B ranked jutsus in the village already. Okay, he was exaggerating, he didn't know all of the jutsus for those ranks, but he knew most of them. And of all elements too. Let's not forget about Taijutsu either. Since he was very old, he called his village's Taijutsu expert, Mito Guy, a truly weird individual, but was faster and physically stronger than all in the village without the use chakra. So even his student Tsunade would get beaten by this guy in a straight-up Taijutsu fight. He was around 24 years old and wore the most hideous green spandex suit in the whole elemental nations, most like the whole world. But it had its purpose in getting rid of the air resistance when he was moving, making him even faster. Well, like he was saying, Guy began to teach young Naruto. He was a little against it, as his training really pushes the muscles to their limit, and then when the warm-up was over, the real training began. And since Naruto had been getting trained by him since he was age 3, that means that he was a little more buffer, lean, a little bit too strong for someone his age. And even then his training had to progress faster after what happened sometime before Naruto turned 4. It was the reason why he enlisted Naruto into the ANBU Corps shortly after. 2 years ago, give or take a few of the months. Naruto had just gotten out of training with his sensei, Guy, and he was super tired from the brutal training he was put through. And even though he had been doing this kind of training for a couple of months, he was still tired, and yet he never complained, since Taijutsu was the only thing he could work on for the time, since Hokage Jiji said that even though his chakra reserves were higher than everybody's in the village, that he had to let it settle before he started to do anything chakra related. He was sore as he wandered through the forest in search of the Hokage's compound. Around the area, it was always a little hard to navigate through the forest during the new moon, as even his demon-enhanced eyes needed just a little light to fully work, so everything he was seeing was just a little fuzzy. After a while of walking, his ninja senses started to go off, and he jumped to the left, evading a couple of kunai. He activated his Sharingan and looked at his attackers, and even though Jiji told him not to do anything chakra related, it was just second nature for him to activate his Sharingan. In front of him were 5 ANBU, or they looked like ANBU. He did notice the scent of wet soil and magnesium, a common element in Tsuchi no Kuni, so that meant they were ninja from Iwagakure. Jiji had warned him of that village. He said information, no matter how important to a village, will somehow end up being leaked outside of the village. That was something he told him when he first began his studies. He also told him, because you hold the Kyuubi, and the public knows this, they will try to do things to take their anger out on you, even if they have to give up the heir to important clans of the village, vengeance, and revenge. It's very important not to have these emotions corrupt your mind. You understand, Naruto-kun? He had asked him. Well, look at what we have here. It looks like the son of the great Kiroi no Senku is all alone, and with no one to protect him. Aw, come on guys, let's take care of him for a while. The man in the middle said, indicating that he was the leader of the squad. The man on the right side of the leader began chuckling. Yeah, and by take care of you, he doesn't mean we're going to sit down to a nice cup of tea. He means we're going to beat you up. He said, laughing hysterically. The leader looked at him. Thanks, Jackal, you're the best subordinate I have ever had. He said sarcastically. What I thought was the best? That's not fair, I work way more than he does. A very tall muscular man said from behind the leader. No, Raccoon, you're also my best subordinate. The leader said. This time another tall man became loud. What, Taicho? I thought I was the best, you just said yesterday. This man was just as tall as Raccoon, but not as muscular. The captain then looked at him. Now Boar, now is not the time to get pissy, you're all my best minions, yes even you Gecko. He said, looking at the last member of his team. This one was by far nearly shorter than Naruto himself. And speaking of Naruto, he knew he should have left or attacked by now, but he was rooted to his spot, and he didn't know why, as he watched as the team of dust members argued with each other, with a huge sweat drop behind him. He cleared his throat. Yeah, so, as much as I would love to hear you 5 argue, I got to get home and get some dinner and rest, so yeah. He said, as he started backing away from them. They turned their attention to him, and the leader began talking. Yeah, sorry about that kid, so where were we? Oh yeah, now we're going to kill you, so it's only respectful to know the names of the one who is going to kill you. I am the leader of this elite fighting force, Captain Goat, and we are the men who stare at goats. He said, as he and his whole team struck a pose together, making Naruto's sweat drop becoming even bigger, nearly toppling him. Naruto did shake his head after a while, as the team stayed in their pose. I'm going to have nightmares of these people after this is done. And even though, like I said earlier, he was still tired from his earlier training, so he only had one chance of getting out of this situation alive and sane. He quickly took out a pellet from his pocket, dug his nail into it, and quickly threw the pellet into the air, where it exploded in a bright flare of fire. It was a signal flare the Hokage gave to him. He had it specially designed for people that couldn't use chakra for the original signal fire. And before the pellet even exploded, he had turned around and bolted out of there, in hopes of getting to the Hokage before they caught up to him. And catch up to him they did, as they appeared in front of him, but he was still going, and the first attack went through the dust member, Gecko, as his fist went through the mask and into his face, shattering the skull, and it was all thanks of the speed he was moving and the strength behind his strike. This was his first kill, but he didn't have time to be devastating at taking a life, as the others responded. Jackal sent a punch at his face, Boar tried to sweep him under his feet, while Raccoon came from above with a downward strike, using both hands clenched together making a much larger single fist. And everything was timed perfectly, from getting punched, then swept, and then pummeling into the ground, except he was a regular person, as he had his Sharingan, which predicted the whole thing, so he simply jumped backwards where Goat was waiting for him. But back to the other three, they had crashed into each other. Boar was hit with Raccoon's attack and his leg snapped, nearly making him scream in pain. And if it wasn't for his pain tolerance training he would have. Let's not forget about Jackal. Raccoon's attack had went through his shoulder and continued on to Boar's leg. He was the one that screamed. Now back to Naruto. He was trying to avoid the captain's strikes, and it was only because of the Sharingan that it was happening. He was quickly getting more exhausted as time went by. He was also fortunate that he remembered about the others, and while they were arguing with each other to watch where they were going, he quickly sent a kunai at their heads. 2 out of 3 wasn't so bad, as Raccoon had dodged his, seeing it coming. And now it was 2-on-1, and they got their break, as fatigue fully set in for Naruto, as he couldn't dodge the recent snap kick from Goat. And that was when the beating started. They started kicking and punching him in all places, as they were doing damage to his little hard body. It was a full 30 seconds later that the Hokage and a full platoon of ANBU appeared at the scene and killed the intruders. The Hokage quickly and carefully picked up Naruto's beaten and battered body. He had a completely swollen face and blood coming out of cuts and bruises all over his body. His clothes had been nearly completely torn off of him, and his arms and legs were crushed, but looked like it was beginning to slowly heal, as the Kyuubi was doing everything in its limited power to heal up Naruto's body. And it had its work cut out for it, as Naruto suffered many broken ribs and internal bleeding, not to mention a cracked skull. It took 3 full months for Naruto to completely heal from the damage that his body had sustained. Sandaime walked into the hospital room like he had been doing for the past 3 months and checked on Naruto. He awoke with the head doctor in the room with him, finishing up her analysis. "Well, Naruto, it looks like you're completely healed and healthy. Now remember, no training for another month to let your muscles finish healing," she said, knowing that he was being trained by the Hokage himself and was pretty strong even now. Naruto grinned. "Thank you, Ka-chan," he said happily as he hugged his mother figure. She had helped him these past 3 months with so much, like his first kill problem. That first month was hard on his mind, as he wished he wouldn't survive his injuries. But Nico-chan helped him with everything, telling him that he shouldn't even be training or fighting so early in his life. He was only 3 for Kami's sake. But she soon started to understand that without his training he never would have known how to signal help and fight off the enemy until help arrived. They finally noticed a Hokage in the room. "Oh, Hokage-sama, when did you get here?" Nico said, looking at the Hokage, but still had Naruto in her arms. "Hey, Gigi," Naruto said, waving one of his hands to Sandaime. Hiruzen smiled at the sight. Ever since Naruto-kun had met Nico, he had become attached to her, calling her Kasan, and she always called him her Sachi. She never had. Was it because Nico had also been an orphan in her younger days, or was it her womanly charms? "Oh, I've been here for a while now. Can I have a moment with Naruto, alone please?" he asked the woman, who nodded and walked out of the room. "I've been thinking about what happened 3 months ago, and I came to the decision to put you in the ANBU Corps. You will be seriously trained and groomed to become a fully fledged ANBU in time. This means that I'm going to up your training. I have no doubts that in the beginning you start to curse my name, but soon you'll start to see the results of your training. And then after giving you a simulated mission, we'll see if you'll be capable of finally becoming an ANBU. So what do you say? Would you like to become stronger?" Sarutobi said, as his eyes burned with fire at the end of his speech. Naruto just smirked and jumped out of bed. "Did you really have to ask that, Oji-san? I'm not going to have my ass handed to me after what happened. No more, I say. Next time they won't even have a chance to apologize to me. They'll already be dead," Naruto said with his eyes burning at the end of his speech. "And plus hospital food sucks." He ruined the moment and made the Hokage laugh. End flashback. And now after all that training, he was as strong as his elite jounin, so he may have gone a little overboard with the training, but it had to be done. On the day of his simulated ANBU-like mission he passed with flying colors, and even when his teammates were captured, and he had that decision to either save them or complete the mission, he didn't panic and did both, using the forbidden jutsu, the shadow clone technique. He was able to have them complete the mission, which was to blow up a bridge to prevent enemy troops from crossing over, while his shadow clones stealthily stormed the place where his teammates were captured and saved them, and they all went home. Mission accomplished. Later that day, Sarutobi told him that the mission he had done was one his father had done with his team. Rin was the one captured, and Kakashi and Obito Had that decision of completing the mission or saving a comrade, and the end result wasn't pretty, as Obito later lost his life. Kakashi became more secluded, and Rin, well, not even he knew where she went. He then told him about Kakashi's father and how he had a similar dilemma and he saved his comrades other than finishing his mission and was ridiculed because of it, which led him to take his own life. Learn from past experiences and you'll know, when the time comes, what choice is the right choice. Okay, back to them. They had ended the spar. You just keep getting stronger and stronger, Naruto. So are you ready to fully join the ANBU? You've just received the okay from the ANBU commander, Tora, so when you're ready we'll go over there and you'll receive your armor, mask, codename, ANBU registration number, and lastly your ANBU tattoo. Later you'll be put on a team to work with. Sarutobi said, moving around and then taking off a part of his battle armor, as Naruto's strength had put a huge dent in it. His armor was getting older and more rusty the less he used and polished them, and he hadn't done that in the last decade, so he needed new ones. Damn Naruto, you broke my armor, you need to watch your strength, he said as he fully took the broken piece of armor off. Naruto chuckled sheepishly and rubbed the back of his head. Sorry about that, Gigi. It's just that I know where your armor's weak points are and I had to exploit it, but maybe I did use too much power, he said, getting into his thinking pose, which was to rub his chin and narrow his eyes a little. So Oji-san, can we go to HQ now? I don't want to keep the Satacho waiting, now do we? He said after a while of thinking. The Hokage smirked. I thought you'd never ask, he said as he grabbed Naruto's shoulder and their body flickered away. Later they appeared in front of a rundown old building that was a part of Konoha that was destroyed by the Kyuubi years ago. The commander felt that it was a great idea to put headquarters here in the place that no person will ever go again. So they closed it off, built a giant wall around it, and then a wall to protect the HQ, and yet they only use one building, kind of a waste of space, if you ask Naruto. The Hokage opened the door, and they met darkness. After walking in that darkness for what felt like hours, but was only a couple of minutes, Sarutobi opened another door, and then they entered the real HQ after going down the elevator that was in the previous room. It was there that they felt more eyes on them. There were ANBU everywhere in the large and spacious room, some with their masks on and some without. The ones without were people he most likely already seen, so they wasn't worrying about putting their mask back on, because if what they heard was true, then the kid will join them in secrecy pretty soon. They entered another room where someone was waiting for them. It wasn't the commander, just someone else, Usagi, if what he could make out of the person's mask. Alright, we already had your measurements, so here goes your armor you'll wear whenever you put on your ANBU mask, the woman said as she gave Naruto his armor. Naruto then went to a changing room and changed into his armor. It was deep black colored, a nice color, if you ask him, must have been specially made by the Hokage, since the others he had seen had something that looked like light gray. He walked out in his armor, and Sandame nodded his head in approval. I knew black was going to be a good color for you, he said as he handed him something else. Here, this is what you'll wear when you're undercover and whatnot, he said as he handed him a black cloak. Naruto nodded and put it on over his armor and kept the hood off. After that, Sarutobi and Naruto entered another room. This one was completely dark, save for a couple of spotlights showing dozens of masks behind protective glass. Naruto knew what he had to do, so he walked around looking for a mask that would fit his personality, and he saw the perfect one. It was a kitsune mask, and he picked it. An ANBU appeared out of nowhere, wearing a Saru mask. So you picked the kitsune mask? Did you know that this mask has not been picked ever since the Kyuubi attack, and the only one that had it later killed himself because he was representing such a monster? He asked the boy. Don't answer that, of course you don't know, she said after seeing Naruto's confused face and got the mask for him. And Naruto put it on, making it stick with chakra. He was also getting the feel for it, like checking the weight it had and if he could see clearly through it. He liked what he was seeing. As he activated his Sharingan for a quick second to check with it, he deactivated it and took off the mask and put it slanted on his head and nodded to the man. Hiruzen then spoke from behind him. Okay Naruto, your ANBU registration number will now be 01TA8579N6, he said, writing it down in the ANBU's registration manual. They left and entered another room. This room was round and had a balcony going around it, and in the middle of the room was a chair that he knew was where he would get his ANBU tattoo and become a full-fledged ANBU, a rookie, but an ANBU nonetheless. Up in the balconies were the entire ANBU Corps, and they were there to witness the induction of their youngest and most known member. Everyone in the ANBU Corps knew about the young blonde. He was the son of the 4th Hokage and Uzumaki Kushina. Those two were legends in their lifetime, and even to this very day, legends they remain. They also knew about the Sharingan he had since birth. Inu, Kakashi, wasn't going to be the only one in the Corps to have a Sharingan now. Naruto sat in a chair when somebody sat down in the chair next to him. He sat down some items next to him. This was the ANBU commander, Tora. It was customary for the ANBU commander to finalize any inductee by tattooing the ANBU symbol of their left shoulder. "Give me your arm, boy," he said in a stern voice. Naruto held out his left arm, and Tora took some blood from it and put Naruto's blood in the bucket of ink and mixed it around. The wound then closed up, with a little vapor coming off of it. After properly mixing the blood with the ink, he held it up to Naruto's hand. "Put some of your chakra in the ink," he said again, as Naruto did, as he was told. He watched as his chakra fused with the ink, and yet the man kept the bucket up to his hand. "Now add some of the Kyuubi's chakra in there," he said, and Naruto struggled but accomplished the task of adding Kyuubi's chakra into the bucket and watched as the ink bubbled for a while before it settled. The man nodded and proceeded to give him a tattoo of the ANBU symbol. Naruto didn't scream or wince at the pain because somewhere in his subconscious he knew that this was a test to check his pain tolerance, and if he couldn't handle it then the tattoo wouldn't get complete and he'll be kicked out of the ANBU before he could even start. The man finished the tat and stood up. "Congratulations, you are now ANBU," the man said with his gruff and stern voice gone. It was replaced with a deep and yet easygoing voice. He began to speak louder as he was talking to the whole Corps now. "I want you all to welcome our newest member, Kitsune. Know that because you are the Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi, that you will not be treated in any less way and receive the same kind of respect from all members. Am I right, everybody?" he said, as the ANBU all around began to cheer for their newest brother. The man turned back to Naruto. "Now you have your first mission." Naruto looked back to the man. "What is the mission? And I'll see that it is completed quickly and successfully," he said, as he stared at the man in his eye. The man smirked at the kid's determination. "Your first mission is to swear your loyalty to the Hokage," he said, watching Naruto nod and turn around facing the Hokage. Naruto stared at the Hokage, activating his Sharingan, and bowed on his knees. "I Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto aka Kitsune, member of the elite ANBU Corps, swears allegiance to the Hokage of Konohagakure. I swear to protect and serve this man and achieve anything and everything I am told." He finished talking and stayed on his knees and left his head bowed. The Hokage looked at him. "Raise your head," he spoke in a commanding voice and watched as Naruto did as he was told. He then took out a scroll and unsealed 4 swords, a katana, nadachi, kadachi, and a ninja too. He laid them on the floor and said a simple phrase, "Choose wisely," he said. Naruto looked at each of the swords, knowing that whatever sword he picked will be his weapon until his death, or if he ever leaves ANBU, but that'll never happen, right? He picked up the katana, knowing that even though he was short now he'll grow taller and be able to use it properly. He took his sword and strapped it to his back, under his cloak, making the handle stick out at the top. It was like the sword was as Anbato compared to the kid, as it was nearly taller than he was. Sword, 3 feet, Naruto, 3 feet 4 inches. Tora walked up to the kid and clasped his hand on his left shoulder. "I would like to personally welcome you to what we jokingly call the Brotherhood," the man said, as he and the rest of the ANBU all laughed heartily at the joke. It didn't take Naruto a long time before he too started laughing. A week later, Naruto and Sarutobi were walking to the latter's office after their afternoon training. They entered to see Uchiha Fugaku, and he was sitting at his desk waiting for them. "Oh hey Fugaku-san, is it time already?" he said as he sat down in his big all-comfy chair, sighing as he did so. The man nodded as he looked at Naruto, standing beside the Hokage. "I can't believe this is the first time I actually got to meet you, Naruto-kun. It's nice to meet you," he said, putting out his hand for a shake. Naruto looked at the hand weirdly before shaking it. Not to be disrespectful, but who are you?" he said, causing Fugaku to laugh a little. The Hokage looked at Naruto. "This is the man I was telling you about just now. This is Uchiha Fugaku. He is adopting you into his family, the Uchiha clan. Their compound is where you will now be staying and trained." "No, but we talked about this also. Since you were born with the Sharingan, This man feels that you should live with others that have the Sharingan, and they will teach you how to use your Sharingan properly," he said, holding up his hand to prevent Naruto from saying but Gigi, I already know how to use my Sharingan properly," he said, activating his Sharingan and making it spin very quickly. "Fine," he said, as the Hokage didn't budge in his decision. He turned to Fugaku, "So do I have to call you Two-sen or something?" he asked the man, making him laugh again and shake his head no. "No, my boy, you don't need to call me your father, but you will be staying in the same house as my family, though my wife will love it if you called her Ka-san," he said, as the Sandaime finally gathered the papers he was looking for and gave them to Fugaku for signing and jotted down his final approving. Naruto's new name was Namikaze Uzumaki Uchiha Naruto, and he had a new home to go to. After Naruto also signed his name, the one before and the one after, he left with Fugaku. They walked through the village, many looking at them curiously because they wanted to know why the demon was walking with the Uchiha clan head. They seen them enter the Uchiha compound and came to the conclusion that the demon was adopted into one of the most prestigious clans of the village, meaning that they better had changed their minds on him or suffer the wrath of the Uchiha. Naruto had only been in public a couple of times in his short 6 years of life, and out of all those times he liked this one better. The other times, he would always be glared at, even if he was with the Hokage of the village, and even if he was the son of the Yondaime. Though he didn't think they knew that detail, just a demon part. He couldn't help but smirk at the look on their faces after seeing him walk with the head Uchiha. Maybe being with this family won't be so bad after all, he thought, as he watched the man nod to the passing Uchiha and some of the girls giggling at him. He guessed that they loved the color of his eyes. Blue-gray is the best of them all, it's like a cloudy sky. They soon walked up to his new home. When they entered they saw two boys talking about the training that the eldest promised to put the youngest through. A woman came from the kitchen with an apron over her dress. Boys, calm down, your father will be here any moment and you don't want him to see you two argue," she said to her two sons as the eldest poked his younger brother in the forehead. "Too late," said a voice from the doorway. "I'm already here with a new addition to the family, go on, introduce yourself," he said to the boy, lightly moving Naruto in front of him. Naruto sighed as he was moved. He waved his hand. "Hi, my name's Namikaze Uzumaki Uchiha Naruto, and I was just adopted by this man here. So I hope you'll respect me as I'll respect you," he said to the family. Mikoto nearly squealed. "Hi, I'm Mikoto, you can call me Ka-san, and these are my sons Itachi and Sasuke, you can call them your brothers," said Mikoto. She was a beautiful woman, around 29 years old, a medium-sized D-cup breast. She had long black hair that reached her shoulder blades. She wore a brown dress and had a beige apron over it, which she just took off. She was wearing any shoes, as that was some kind of tradition in all households. She was a retired jounin that stood at the height of 5 feet 2 inches. He knew that because she suddenly appeared in front of him and hugged him to her breast. "Welcome to the family, we have been expecting you." She let him go after she heard him gasping for breath. "Sorry about that, I'm just so happy." She grabbed his hand and dragged him to the table and sat him down. "Lunch will be here any minute now, wait right there," she said, skipping to the kitchen humming a small tune. Naruto was just staring at her as she skipped to the kitchen. He was a little embarrassed at what had just happened until he remembered she said something about lunch. He looked at her two sons. "What is she making for lunch?" "Is it dango?" Naruto said eagerly. Itachi said, "No, she's making udon." Itachi looked like a nice boy. He had a mysterious line on each side of his nose. He was wearing the clan's regular high-collared dark gray shirt and black shorts. He was around the age of 9 and stood at 4 feet 5 inches. He was sitting at the table cross-legged and he was eating some pocky from under the table. "You say that you hate udon, Itachi ni?" Sasuke said from beside his brother. Sasuke has Itachi's younger brother, around the age of 5. He was still rubbing his forehead where Itachi had poked him. He too wore a high-collared shirt, his was black, and he wore light gray shorts. His hair was unlike his brother's, which wasn't spiky like his. His brother's hair framed his face in front and was tied in a short ponytail in the back. He also framed his face but got spiky in the back, making it resemble a certain animal's backside. "I do like it, I was just answering his question, Atauto." "Whatever, so Naruto, do you have anything you like other than dango?" he asked him, curious about his new family member. Naruto went into his thinking pose. Well, I like many other things. They're just too many to tell you, but I do hate salted octopus. It tastes weird to me. If you leave the salt out of it, then I'll gladly eat it. He said, as Makoto came out of the kitchen with a bowl of udon in each hand and one balanced on her head. Makoto-san, he started to say when she glared dangerously at him. Ka-san, I'll be glad to help if you want me to. He said, pointing to the bowl on her head. Oh, that's so nice of you. Too bad none of my other kids have manners like you do. She said, letting him get the bowl from her head, just for that you can get seconds whenever you like. She said, smiling at him. The other boys in the room yelled, what? I do have manners, I just didn't know you'll come out of the kitchen carrying all the bowls. They said at the same time. She just said, excuses. Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Oh, that's nothing. Teaching me manners was the first thing Gigi taught me. He said, chuckling nervously, as both of the boys glared at him. They all sat down and ate after Makoto and Fugaku from his study to join them in having lunch. All of them were chuckling and enjoying each other's company, as Naruto thought, this isn't so bad, this family is nice to be with. And plus I better enjoy myself while I'm with them because I'm going to have to do some missions pretty soon, I can feel it in my bones. He thought as he finished his udon. Later that night, he knew that he'd have to do a mission as soon as an ANBU wearing an Inu mask appeared in the room he got from Makoto. It was a nice clean room. He got up and unsealed his ANBU attire from his colorless seal located on the back of his right hand. He got dressed and donned his kitsune mask, and they soon left the compound towards the village's eastern gates. Not knowing that Itachi saw them leave through his bedroom window. They reached the gate and met up with two other ANBU members, one wearing a Nico mask and the other wearing an Hibi mask. They both had their ANBU tattoos on their right shoulder, showing that they were females. When I was here, I had to get him for his first real mission. Inu said from behind his mask. Well, at least you're here now, let's get started, the mission isn't going to finish itself. Hibi said she had purple hair and pupil-less brown eyes. She stood at 5 feet 3 inches and had light gray armor under her black cloak. You're so impatient, why don't you just calm down? Nico said, and they began to argue with each other. Can both of you be quiet, Nico, why don't you at least act like you're my lieutenant, and Hibi, we'll leave right now, just calm down. Inu commanded them calmly, he then looked at Naruto. Don't worry about them, they are really good friends. Now show us why the Hokage himself put you in ANBU. He said, as they all vanished and started their nighttime adventures. The forest was always peaceful at night, the stars were out, and the moon shining on the forest below. Animals turning into sleep, and predators relaxing after a great meal. And do you know the best thing? The ANBU team didn't disrupt the atmosphere at all. Following the team, we see 3 figures, wait, that's 4 figures, the 4th was just short. And yet his height didn't hinder him at all, as he was keeping up with the others' speed. Kitsune was irritated, as he was jumping from tree to tree. Why? Because he couldn't believe what his first mission assignment was, as an ANBU border patrol. Seriously, they woke me up for this. He thought happily that his face was covered by his mask, so that his squad members couldn't see his scowl. Well, at least he thought that they didn't notice. His comrade Nico turned to him. What's wrong, Kitsune-kun? She asked, noticing his tense neck muscles. Kitsune turned to his worried squad member. Nothing. Why would you think something is wrong? He said. She quietly giggled, because your neck has been tense ever since the mission briefing. Kitsune's eyes widened a little at that, until he remembered that she was ANBU, and that was one of the skills in being ANBU, being able to notice the little things and use them as an advantage for other things. You don't have to be so tense, you never know what could happen on these missions, but it's best to always hope for the worst, so that you'll never be surprised during the mission, you understand? She said after a while. You know she is right, Kitsune-kun, but she left out the most simplest detail in being an ANBU. You have to always be on your guard when on duty, you can never relax until you are off duty, so for now on be prepared to be awake for many nights in a row. Hibi said, slightly turning her head and looking in his eye holes for a brief second, seeing his activated Sharingan eyes. Girls, quit pestering Kitsune, this is his first mission. Border patrol is always ANBU's first mission. It's to prepare them for long nights of sleep and being on guard and some other stuff I forgot. Inu then gave a deep reminiscent sigh. I remember my first mission, I slept for days after it. He said, holding up his hand signaling his subordinates to halt. They stopped and overlooked the clearing in view, seeing a bandit camp inside of Hino Kuni. Now that was something they couldn't have that. Looking in the campsite, they could see a total of 14 bandits, and though they didn't see any civilians, they could smell the heavy scent of blood and burning flesh, meaning that they had people there earlier and burned the bodies, likely to get rid of evidence of them even being there. Okay, these goons must be eliminated, they cannot continue living if this is what they're going to do with their lives. He then looked at his rookie ANBU. Are you okay with killing others? I am unaware if you have killed before? Inu asked, keeping his voice down. Yes, I'm okay with it. I had my first kill a few months before I turned 4. I'm pretty sure I can handle these weak bandits. He said, ignoring the concerned words of the female members of the squad. Oh, you poor baby. Nico said, pulling Kitsune into her chest. The only things keeping his face from her breast were his mask and her armor. I'm okay, Nico. I killed 3 out of the 5, but I was put in the hospital for 3 months. Let's not talk about this now. We have to get rid of these bandits. He said, as Nico let go of him, and they all looked over the camp. Alright squad, this is what we are going to do. Kitsune, I want you to take all the bandits in the east of the camp. Hebe, you got west, Nico you get south, and I'll get north. Alright, you have your orders. I want these kills to be silent, wait for my signal, and then attack. Inu ordered, as they all went to their positions. Kitsune went to the east of the camp, and if you divide the camp up correctly, then that means that he has 6 bandits to kill. No, wait, 7. The food was being served in the east, and they were eating. Fortunately for him, their backs were turned to the forest, meaning he could easily kill them all when the signal was given. Nico went to the south, the area where only 3 bandits were. This area was where the tents were, and her targets were busy sleeping after having a busy day. Hebe went to the west where 3 bandits were. These bandits were towards the middle, using the light of the fire to play poker, and from the looks of it they sucked. They all were getting bad cards. She sighed at Kitsune having the most bandits on his side. Lucky brat, she thought. Inu stayed in the north and watched as the leader was coming up with a plan to attack the nearby village again, and this time take more than just money and women. Maybe I should kidnap the mayor's daughter and get some money and food out of that, and he'll get her back after I had my fun with her. The bandit leader said loud enough for Inu to hear. And speaking of Inu, he held up his hand in view of his team in the open palm position, and when he closed it, the attack started. The team of ANBU launched into the clearing stealthily and killed the ones they were assigned. Kitsune threw multiple kunai at his targets, and before you know, 6 were down. He only threw 6 because he wanted to do this personally. He ran up to the remaining bandit just as he noticed his comrades were falling to the ground. He was about to yell out to the boss when his throat was cut, and all that came out was the gurgling sound of him drowning in his own blood before quietly setting in. Nico ran through the tents, quietly slitting the throats of the bandits. Hebe jumped high in the air and landed on the table, and while the bandits looked surprised, she spun in a circle and decapitated all of them with her ninja too. Inu just dropped from his perch and sliced the leader down the middle with his own ninja too. They met in the middle where Hebe was sitting on the table without an ounce of blood on her. She leaped off and landed in front of her comrades. That wasn't so bad, but I still don't like that Kitsune-kun got the most bandits to kill. It's so unfair, she said, crossing her arms. I'm sorry, Hebe-chan, is there something I can do to make it up to you? Kitsune asked him, not seeing or hearing the rest of his teammates waving their hands in the no motion. Hebe just gasped happily, sure there is. The minute we get back to the village you can treat me to some dango, she said, moving her mask to the side a little bit and kissed him on the cheek and started skipping away happily. Kitsune just stood there in disbelief. What did I just get myself into? He asked out loud. The others shook their heads. She's going to stick to you like glue now, they both said and followed Hebe out of the clearing. 6 a.m. The next day. The team returned after a short time doing border patrol. Usually a team would do border patrols for a week and up, but since this was Kitsune's first mission, the Hokage didn't want his skills to be wasted on doing border control. When they reached the gates, Kitsune let out a big yawn. He had been doing this for the past hour and a half, and his team was getting annoyed at its consistency. Okay, that's the last straw. Either stop yawning or I'm doubling the amount of dango you're treating me to, Hebe said, exploding upon hearing the latest yawn. Hebe, what did I tell you about yelling at Kitsune-kun? You have to remember, even if he has the skills to be an ANBU, he's still a kid, and kids need sleep, Nico said, defending Kitsune. Hebe gave a deep and heavy sigh as they passed the gate. Only 2 more years of this, and I get to become a full interrogator and torturer, she thought dreamily. She stopped thinking when they entered the huge red tower the Hokage works at, ready to give her report. They all appeared in front of the Hokage and said at the same time, while bowing, "Mission accomplished, Hokage-sama." Their voices matching perfectly, almost making it seem like one person talked. You could tell they were working on this. Hiruzen looked up from his paperwork, and even though he would never be working on paperwork at this hour, he was bored at the moment. He finished his book already, and reading it again took away the surprises that came the first time. "Ah, Team Omega, I've been expecting you," he said happily that something took him away from his paperwork. "Tell me, how was Kitsune-kun's first mission?" he asked, lighting his pipe. Inu smirked behind his mask. "Well, he did very well. We encountered a bandit camp a couple of miles away from the northern border and quickly dispatched them. Yeah, with Kitsune-kun taking most of the kills, that's why he has to treat me to dango after this meeting," Hebe said, crossing her arms, causing Kitsune to chuckle nervously and rub the back of his head at having to be reminded of that. Saratobi chuckled, as did the other members of Team Omega. "Well, I feel sorry for you. Now Kitsune-kun, take off your mask for me please," the Hokage said, as Kitsune did, and Naruto's face appeared, wearing a very bored face. "You did great, Naruto-kun, congratulations," he said, smiling at his young charge. Naruto rubbed the back of his head sleepily before lightly glaring at the Hokage. "Gigi, if I get another border patrol mission I'm going to quit. That was the most boringest thing I have ever done," he said, running his hand through his hair. "Naruto-kun, what did I say about boringest not being a word? You have to quit using it," Saratobi reprimanded his student. Naruto just sighed, "Yes, Oji-sensei," he said, but then something happened that he didn't want to happen and he yawned. And Hebe promptly exploded. "That's it, we're going to the dango stand. You guys could take care of the rest of the report, right?" she said, taking off her mask, revealing a face that made Naruto's face turn red. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen, and he had seen some beautiful faces, like Nico Ka-chan, Makoto Ka-san. There was one when the Hokage took him to the Hyuga compound to have tea and learn proper manners. It was the Hidam-chan, the Hiyashi's wife. And even when he was given his Genjutsu lessons from Yui Kurenai, the Genjutsu mistress herself. It didn't matter if she was only a Chunin. With the Genjutsus she knew she could probably take on some of the most strongest, weak-minded shinobi in the elemental nations. She had eyes that were similar to his Sharingan, and they had the same hypnotizing ability. You could really just get lost looking into her eyes. Of course, you would think that just because he's only 6, that he wouldn't know what he's talking about. I only have this to say, age ain't nothing but a number. Now maturity is what he is looking for, and his revealed face showed a whole lot of maturity. Everybody was staring at Naruto, who was staring at Hebe. He had been doing this for the past minute or so, and it has been creeping Hebe out. "Kid, you there, hello?" she said, snapping her fingers in front of his face. Only then did Naruto get out of his trance. "Huwa, oh sorry," he said, rubbing his head in embarrassment. He didn't have any more time, as Hebe put her mask back on and started dragging him to the window before body flickering out and to HQ to change their clothes before going to the dango stand. 5 minutes later, Naruto walked out of his room in HQ and waited in front of baby's room, waiting for her to finish changing so he could get this over with. He didn't like giving up his dango for someone else's sake. But when Hebe walked out introducing herself as Mitarashi Anko, he said out loud, "But for you, I will make an exception." She made a face that showed her confusion before perking up. "Well, come on, let's go get me some dango," she said, grabbing his hand and dragging him outside HQ before body flickering out and appearing in a nearby alley. There was barely anybody outside, and the ones outside were only opening their stores and getting ready for their day with a morning walk or run. As Guy stopped in front of them, "Naruto-kun, my youthful student, how's life treating you? I bet it's pretty youthful, am I right?" he asked. "So how about we get some morning training done? Anko-san, you can join too," he said, grabbing both of their hands and sped off into the distance. 5 hours later, Anko and Naruto slumped their way into the dango stand at 11 a.m. When they walked in, they saw a girl with familiar purple hair and Kurenai eating dango. "Oh, here they are, Nai-chan," the purple-haired girl said. Anko perked up a little at seeing her friends and walked over there, and Naruto followed, yawning, as he sat down. Anko let it slide as she too yawned after seeing him do it. "I'm never training with Guy ever again," Anko said, taking one of the dango skewers off the plate in the middle of the table. Naruto looked at her sleepily. "Aw, Anko-chan, at least you finished a warm-up, that's great. Not many people can say that trained with Guy-sensei and passed the warm-up," Naruto said, proudly letting out another yawn. "Waitress, can I have a cup of coffee please?" he asked. She looked at him funny. "Kid, we don't serve coffee to minors," she said, walking away. Naruto sighed. He called her over again. "Waitress, can I please have a cup of coffee?" he said. His eyes turned red for a while before going back to normal. She perked up. "Sure, how would you like to have it?" Naruto smiled and said, "Surprise me please?" She nodded and went on her way. He looked at the table's occupants and found them looking at him. "What? I don't feel like having any problems today, and not getting served coffee just because I'm a kid was definitely going to be a problem," he said, putting his head down. "Go on, Anko-chan, order all the dango you want, as long as you save me some," he said, waving his hand in the air, waiting for his coffee. "You know, Yu-chan, we should have seen this coming," Anko said, ordering herself about 3 dozen skewers of dango and a bottle of sake. "I mean, he just goes off on an all-night mission and then gets dragged into training with Guy for the past 5 hours. I'm surprised I'm not passed out," Anko added. "Yeah, I heard about Guy. He calls himself Konoha's green beast. I hear he's wicked strong and incredibly fast, and yet even with all that he has no sense of fashion," Kurenai said, taking a bite out of her own dango. The waitress came back and tapped Naruto on the shoulder, waking him up instantly. "Here you go, I got you black, with sugar and cream," she said, putting his coffee down. Naruto thanked her and gave her a 50 yen tip for the 10 yen coffee. She thanked him and went to her next table. Naruto took a sip from his coffee and looked around the table. "So what's your name, pretty lady?" he said, not want to say Nico while in public. She smiled at him. "Well, Naruto-kun, my name is Yuzuki Yugao. It's finally nice to meet the real you," she said, flipping her hair a little. "Now that I think about it, shouldn't you be getting back to the Uchiha compound? I bet Motoko-san is worried about you. She doesn't know anything about, for all she knows she probably thinks you've gotten kidnapped," Yugao said. Naruto shot up in his chair at the mention of the Uchiha. "Oh yeah, I forgot all about them. Well, I'll just tell them that I got up really early to train with Guy-sensei, since it's the truth," he said, taking another sip from his coffee and getting up from his seat before Anko yanked him back down. "Hey, where do you think you're going? Don't ride and skip out on paying for my dango. Now sit and watch us beautiful girls eat," she said, causing the other girls to giggle. Naruto's head dropped to the table, and the last thought before he fell asleep was, "Makoto-ka-san is going to kill me for worrying her." The 3 girls looked at the sleeping boy. "Aw, he looks so cute when he's asleep," Yugao said quietly so as to not wake him up. "Ko-chan, are you sure that it was a good idea making him stay here? I mean, that chair is doing nothing for his back. He should be asleep in a soft bed," Kurenai said. "Fine, I'll take him to your house and he can sleep in your bed, are you happy?" Anko said, smirking at Kurenai's blushing face. "Well, give him a couple of years and then he'll get invited to my bed," she said by accident, or was it? She didn't have time to cover her mouth though, as the other 2 girls gasped. "Nai-chan, do you like Naruto-kun? Whatever happened to Asuma-kun? Weren't you going to try and get with him when he came back from the capital?" Yugao asked, looking at her friend. "Of course you like her, Nai-chan. You don't have to lie. You like him to Yu-kan, there's no doubt about that," Anko said, taking a bite from her last dango skewer and drinking the rest of her sake. "So that means you like him in Ko-chang?" Yugao asked her skimpy-dressed friend. "Of course, I just spent nearly a day with the kid. He has loads of stamina and he's incredibly strong, intelligent, his chakra reserves are through the roof, and lastly, in the future he'll grow up to be a very handsome and even more powerful young man. And since we have already established ourselves as the sexist in the village, there is no way that he won't grow more attached to us," she said, finishing her long speech. Thanks for watching my video. Leave a like if you enjoyed my video and also do consider subscribing to my channel for more awesome content. If you want the next part of this story, let me know in the comment box. See you next time. Till then, sayonara.